So my name is Suzanne Heller. I've been with Flight Center going on 10 years. I started in the business as an SDR selling. I was the only SDR within the business at the time. Since then, I've grown SDR teams. I've seen sales operations for the Americas, and then a few years ago, stepping into a global role, overseeing our acquisition and enablement strategy. On the acquisition side, overseeing how we acquire a new customer from an SDR perspective, working with marketing and our ICP. And on the enablement side, all of the tools, the procurement, the strategy, the onboarding, the overall enablement of our sales org globally. As a leader of global teams, the way that we bring alignment across those teams in Highspot was the way that we built Highspot to begin with. So we were very strategic with the way that our spots were built, the way that we titled our spots, and the way that they looked and they felt. So regardless if you were in the Americas or you were in Asia, your homepage looked the same but was regionalized. Whether you're looking for marketing content in Europe or ANZ, your spot looked the same. The content, the lists, you were right at home, but they were consistent across the globe. So if you needed to jump into another market, you felt at home because those spots were aligned and looked identical. So we really leverage how we've built Highspot, that look and feel, to create some alignment and collaboration. We've also built out global spots. So outside of our regional spots that make sense to that region, we have particular global spots that everyone has access to, that they can see that content that makes sense to them. The way FCM leverages Highspot when launching new products is by a good old-fashioned playbook. We could not live without them. Those playbooks give us the know, how, and show and what to do for the reps, whether you're an SDR or a BDM, to understand the new product. What am I supposed to say? What should I do with this information? What content is purposeful around this rollout? But then on the back end, enablement's leveraging the scorecard. So it's not only important for us to understand this new product and help the sellers, but we also need to understand where the impact was to the playbook. What did they look at? And how do we then action that further to continue to support the sellers in that initiative or that new product? So we leverage Highspot's data for multiple efforts across our organization globally. So first, from a content perspective, let's talk about policy and governance and how important that is. We really leverage the spot scorecards to make sure that our content is up to policy, that it's following our particular governance, content is being viewed and active, that should be active in a spot. So content scorecard is incredibly important. We also look at individual content scorecards to understand we've launched a new initiative, a new product, how many views, what are reps doing with that particular piece of content. So that data is really critical to marketing's efforts, enablement's efforts, and that go-to-market strategy. And then from a sales perspective and building pipeline, digital sales rooms, that data is incredibly critical to our lengthy sales cycle that we have, because it's important to understand from a SDR perspective or an AE perspective over those years, what's important to the customer, what have they viewed, what's important to them, what haven't they viewed, and how do we take that data to pivot the sell. So challenges in the past that we've had with onboarding is measuring the success of the actual onboarding. So you can do as many trainings as you want, but to really understand the impact of that time and that content that's been shared, that's always been a challenge for us. Where Highspot comes into play is obviously learning and coaching and the playbooks and the content that's in there and that visibility that we get on the data. So once somebody finishes up a course or a lesson, or we know they've looked at the playbook, we can actually see how much time they've spent, and we should see some success in that area. And if we're not, then we can go back and say, well, hey, we need to actually spend some more time on this because we've got that data to tell us that story. Highspot has actually cut our onboarding by in half the time that it takes for an SDR to ramp, where we started to see meetings being booked in the first month versus 2 or 3 months out. So the purpose of bringing all that content in one place, tracking the performance of that content, and being able to optimize that content for further, new hires, it's really been a game changer for us. Yeah, I think it's interesting when you think about enablement. There are so many different types of enablement. You've got pre-sales, you've got post-sales. But for myself, being that one-man band for so long before hiring, a small team, I really had to think about what the priorities were for each region, for those sales leaders. But I also had to take it one level up to say to the management team, what's important for our business right now, and how can I impact the business within the enablement space? So I really had to prioritize projects. I had to prioritize adding new tools or rolling out new functionality and tools, just because of limited time and resource. But I think it's allowed us to be more successful with those initiatives that were rolled out because we dedicated the time, we had the resource, and we had the KPIs following those initiatives to see and track the success of that. So anyone that's managing things by themselves, prioritization and time management is huge, but tracking your KPIs and the success of what you're doing is also a big win to feel that at the end of the day. I think some advice I would give to other enablement leaders is just do it. Just go for it. Because we have the tools that makes us successful. We have the tools to be able to measure what we're trying to achieve. And it is okay at the end of the day to go back to the drawing board if it doesn't work. But we won't know that if we don't try. And if we look at enablement 5, 10, 15 years ago, it wasn't like what it is today. But because of the trial and errors that have, come up. So advice to anyone that is in an enablement role is just go with your gut and deliver. And it is okay to go back and look at the data and pivot and optimize. You won't know what's successful unless you try it. I think my second piece of advice is buy in to your business, your brand. You tell a story, you bring immense value, and it's really critical to create that brand awareness for yourself and for your team to be able to let them know the purpose and the deliverables and the ROI that you bring to the business. So those would be my two.